What's up, YouTube? Brian here, and today we're talking about something that is not necessarily for the faint of heart. So this video is not for your kids. Alright, YouTube, this one, not necessarily for your kids. I don't know if I'm going to keep my composure in this video, and I'm certainly going to be presenting some content where people are not holding their composure. There's going to be, if not from me, then certainly from some of the evidences I'm going to bring, some inappropriate things, some crudeness, and some vulgarity. So this is not for your kids. Just wanted to get that out there. And if you're a liberal, well, then I would humbly suggest that you safety pin yourself to your safe space so you don't melt, okay? All right, so January 19th of this year, the 45th annual March for Life. January 20th of this year, the very next day, the second annual March Against President Trump. Sorry, the Women's March. Conveniently enough, it's only the second one that they've had, and it's on the anniversary of the inauguration of President Trump.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Because we all hate Trump. We've had 8 years of someone eloquently telling us what we want to hear, and all of a sudden this orange brute comes in and speaks a harsh truth. Like Trump or hate him doesn't matter. You're an American. You have the right to not like him. And you even have the right to gather and to protest. It's one of the beautiful things about this country. It's one of the beautiful things about freedom. But freedom is not in the mindset of those at the Women's March, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. All right, so first things first. January 19th of this year, tens of thousands of people gathered for the 45th time to march in defense of human life. Human life as a basic God-given right. That's why they marched. Why do they march 45 years in a row? Because 45 years ago, the Supreme Court of the United States voted against a self-evident truth. That's right, Roe versus Wade. That's why we march for life. That's why they've been doing it for 45 years, because that's how long Roe v. Wade has been in effect. And since Roe versus Wade has been in effect, over 60 million people have been killed as a result. And the number climbs every single day. And any given day, I can turn on my TV, on demand, History Channel, whatever I want to watch, Discovery Channel, whatever, and I can find any documentaries about the atrocities of 6 million people being killed in what we call the Holocaust. And it was genocide, plain and simple, killing people for who they are. That's what the Holocaust was. 6 million. Anytime I want, I can turn on a documentary and learn about how Hitler and the Nazis exterminated 6 million people for the crime of being who they are. In America today, we mark over 60 million people killed for the crime of being who they are. And if you think that abortion and Nazism have nothing in common, you're mistaken. See, because the laws in Germany at that time stated that Jews were not people and therefore had no rights to protection under the law. What did Roe v. Wade decide 45 years ago? Unborn human beings are not people, and therefore they have no right to protection under the law. Holocaust, Holocaust. Apple to apple. I'm comparing apples to apples here. Ideology to ideology. Now, it's an inconvenient truth, and nobody wants to be called a Nazi. As a matter of fact, that tends to be the argument of the left. Oh, you're a conservative. You're a Nazi. I'm not the one adopting Nazi policy to defend my position. That would be the pro-choice group of people that think a person's not a person, therefore we can kill them. Now, At the March for Life, these phenomenal words were spoken by the Vice President.
More than 240 years ago, our founders wrote words that have echoed through the ages. They declared these truths to be self-evident, that we are, each of us, endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. 45 years ago, the Supreme Court of the United States turned its back on the unalienable right to life. But in that moment, our movement began. A movement that continues to win hearts and minds. A movement defined by generosity, compassion, and love. And a movement that 1 year ago tomorrow inaugurated the most pro-life president in American history, President Donald Trump.
That's right. We hold these truths to be self-evident. What does that mean? It means that so long as you have at least one firing synapse in your brain, you should be able to comprehend what we're about to say next. We hold these truths to be self-evident. If you have a pulse, you can comprehend what we're about to say next. It is self-evident. We hold these truths to be painstakingly flippin' obvious that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life, the first thing they listed as a self-evident, unless you're cognitively just a liberal, you should be able to understand that the right to life is a basic human right. One of the first founding documents of this country, in its opening sentences, said, "It is painstakingly obvious, we all know this to be the truth. We are endowed by our Creator with the right to life." It's that simple. Now, you can go to any feminist or any liberal and ask them when life begins, and you can get any number of answers. Now, Christians, we've been saying that life begins at conception for a very long time. Christians have been saying lots of things for a very long time, and our position on these things, by and large, has not changed over millennia. One of the things that we say, life begins at conception. And very recently, near the end of last year, this whole hashtag science movement kicked off. And, well, it was about climate change and all that, because, you got to change the name from global cooling to global warming to climate change, and you're denying hashtag science if you deny all of this. Well, nobody denies that the temperature of the Earth fluctuates. It's a relatively big planet, and things do tend to happen. Now, we could have a good conversation about human contribution to that, but that's another video. Anyway, so this whole hashtag science thing happened. You Christians deny science. As a matter of fact, I've been told, as a pro-life Christian, I'm not allowed to use science in the pro-choice, pro-life debate because as a Christian, I fundamentally hate science. Not true. Not true. And the reason I was told this is because when I engage myself in a pro-life debate, I don't rely on my faith. I don't quote the Bible. I don't have to search my Lutheran confessions in order to see what am I supposed to believe by faith about life. Because certain truths are self-evident. Certain things prove themselves. And guess what? Life beginning at conception is not a matter of religious dogma anymore. It is a fact of science. The literal spark of life has been observed by scientists. We know without any reasonable doubt that at the moment of conception, life, a human life, things happen that when allowed to follow their natural course will lead to a fully grown, fully formed, fully mature human being. There's nothing in the level of development from the moment of conception until natural death that all of a sudden decides personhood. Either you're a person from the beginning or you were never a person to begin with. So this is why they march on Washington, D.C. And this is why a president, a very, very pro-life president, actually stood up and addressed the crowd.
Today I'm honored and really proud to be the first president to stand with you here at the White House to address the 45th March for Life. That's very, very special. 45th March for Life. And this is a truly remarkable group. Today, tens of thousands of families, students, and patriots, and really just great citizens gather here in our nation's capital. You come from many backgrounds, many places, but you all come for one beautiful cause: to build a society where life is celebrated, protected, and cherished. The March for Life is a movement born out of love. You love your families, you love your neighbors, you love our nation, and you love every child, born and unborn, because you believe that every life is sacred, that every child is a precious gift from God.
Now, there were only tens of thousands marching for life in Washington, D.C. The very next day, hundreds of thousands of people marched. Well, they say for women's rights, but let's be honest. You coincide your second anniversary of your march with the actual anniversary of the inauguration of a president you don't like. We all know why you're really marching. Now, I'm not saying that I hate women, because I don't. I'm not saying these people don't have a right to march, because I'm not. They do. But the stark contrast between a peaceful march where people are holding up signs saying, "I support life," or holding up signs that have a picture of a woman with a baby in her womb and it says, "Love them both." This is the message of the pro-life movement, affirming the basic right to human life that even the founding documents of our country state that we have from God, not from our government. These women marched against President Trump, and they're marching for women's rights. And I'd really like to know what rights they think they don't have. What rights in 2018 do women not have that men do? Because we all know that the pay gap is a myth. We all know that women make less than men because they make vocational choices in their career field and to have families and to care for those families. And feminism will tell you women shouldn't make those choices. Those are bad choices. They're wonderful choices. And in a free society, women have the right to make them. If a woman wants to go to school to be a nurse, or she wants to go to school to be a veterinarian, or she wants to enter into any kind of field like that, that's her right. But, by and large, statistically, men go into fields that are typically more dangerous. I'm not having this argument in 2018. I'm really, really not. Anyways, a woman makes less than a man, typically, statistically, because she chooses her field differently than a man does, and because she chooses to be home and have children. These are all wonderful vocations that belong to women, and in America, they have the right to make that choice or to not make that choice. That's their right. Unless, of course, you're a feminist, and then they shouldn't make those choices, and these women are delusional, and they've been misinformed to such a varying degree that the Women's March habitually does not let pro-life feminists march with them. That's right. Other feminists are not allowed to march in the Women's March because their ideology is different. Now, whereas the pro-life movement was holding up signs affirming life and saying love them both, what do we get from the Women's March? We get vagina hats. We get people dressed up as vaginas. We get all sorts of things against President Trump, comparing him to a butthole and a shithole and all this other crass vulgarity. We get speakers standing up and screaming that we have a racist in the White House.
And we cannot whitewash this anymore. We have a racist in the White House. We have a sexist in the White House. We have a pathological liar in the White House.
There's a stark difference between what these people were saying at their speeches and what the vice president and the president said in their speech at the March for Life just a day prior. One group of people represents mature adulthood, and the other group represents whining children who just want everything for free. I mean, really, what rights are women fighting for at this march? We want free birth control. I want free condoms. Actually, I take that back. I don't use condoms. I'm married. But even my wife is like, they want free birth control. How about they act like an adult, get a job, and pay for it themselves? It's not that expensive. Birth control is not a right. It's not. But what about Viagra? It's covered under insurance. Yeah, for its original intended purpose as a blood pressure medication. Funny side effect to Viagra, as a blood pressure medication, it does funny things to your blood pressure. No man is receiving Viagra for sex under his insurance plan. So we have to pay for our condoms. You have to pay for your birth control. It's called being an adult. The pay gap, that's a myth. Rape culture, if you really want to protest rape culture, first of all, rape culture is a myth, except for in one location in America. If you really want to protest rape culture, then the city to march on is Hollywood, not Washington, D.C. All of those actors and all those people are out there constantly raping each other and then having lavish award ceremonies to give themselves trophies for who can be the best rapist. So if you want to end rape culture, feminists, Hollywood is where you go, not Washington, D.C. I'm just saying. So we have a bunch of flailing temper tantrum, vagina hat wearing women who dress up as literal vaginas, marching around saying, my rights, my rights, my rights. Versus a group of people who habitually for 45 years have been saying, hey, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, there you go. My pursuit of happiness. My right to spread my legs and fornicate as much as I want. I suppose, barring my Christian belief for just a second, you have that right. Men have the right to go out and sow their wild oats. Women have the right to lay on their back and be submissive. But certain things have certain effects. Cause and effect. Sexual intercourse, the insertion of rod support A into slot B, leads to conception. And that is human life. Now we need to have a different conversation. Do you have the right to have sex with whoever you want in a free society? Yes. Do you have the right to kill another human being for the crime of being inconvenient to the life that you want to live? No. No, you don't. I have been told by feminists and pro-choice people, first of all, that I'm not allowed to have an opinion on this topic because I'm a man, so that's discrimination based on gender, number one. Number two, I've also been told that sexual impulses are natural. Really? I didn't know that. I only spent a bulk of my life as a horny male teenager. I had no idea that these impulses were natural. I never had to listen to talk after talk after talk from my mother telling me that my impulses were natural. I had no idea. Thank you for enlightening me, pro-choice feminist. Thank you. You know what else is natural? Conception. The natural effect of giving in to your natural sexual impulses is that you will inevitably one day conceive a child. It's almost as if the function of sex is procreation. Oh! Really? The function of sex is procreation? I thought it was just carnal pleasure. Well, that's an incentive to procreate, and a hell of a good one if you ask me. I tend to happen to be a huge fan of sexual intercourse. And I happen to be a huge fan of the person that I've chosen to have sex with for the rest of my life. My wife has billions of redeeming qualities. That sex is one, and it's kind of low on the list of reasons why I love my wife. There's other things about who she is as a person, her mind, all of these things, the children that she's given me, just everything about her. And yeah, sex is great. It's not why I married her. But So sex is a natural impulse. These are the arguments that I get. Well, okay, let's unsuspend my Christian belief for a minute. Let's look at thou shalt not commit adultery. You fear and love God so that... See, I'm having a disconnect right now because I'm doing this thing where I'm reading from the Book of Concord and I have to read a public domain translation. So the Old English language versus the modern English language of the Catechism that I know, it's just screwing with me. Basically, that the fifth command... is it the fifth commandment? See, now I can't even remember because there's so many different ways to number the commandments. Thou shalt not commit adultery is what I'm saying here. How awful of God to say that. How awful of God to restrict who we can have sex with and how often we can have sex and under what conditions we can have sex. How awful. Okay. God's a big meanie. I get it. What if? For the sake of argument, what if? What if people only had sex with their spouse? What if? What if there was no premarital sex? What if people only had sex with the person to whom they were married for the rest of their life, and they only had sex after they got married? What if? What if that commandment were actually fundamentally implemented and everyone followed it? Rape culture? Gone. Unwanted pregnancies? Gone. Sexually transmitted diseases? Not really an issue anymore. It's almost as if God loved us so much that he said, hey, in a fallen and sinful world, this is going to be bad for you unless it's under these conditions. Keep this commandment. I love you. And knowing full well that we're going to break the commandment anyways, does God condemn us for it? No. He sends his only begotten Son to bear on the cross the condemnation for the sin that we constantly commit so that we can be forgiven. You shall not murder. There's another commandment. It's often translated, you shall not kill, but from Hebrew to English, it's actually, you shall not murder, which is premeditated as opposed to killing in self-defense, or like a soldier or a police officer who oftentimes, according to his vocation, has to kill someone. You shall not murder. If we implemented this, that we wouldn't be gunning each other down. We wouldn't be stabbing each other. We wouldn't be bludgeoning each other with things. My wife would have nothing to watch on TV because Snapped wouldn't exist. It's almost as if God gave us these laws, these commandments, because he loves us and because he wants what's best for us. Now, part and parcel to you shall not murder, it's almost as if the Bible is saying we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these is the right to life. You shall not murder. My children can be highly inconvenient. Highly inconvenient. If I were to adopt pro-choice ideologies, my children are inconvenient. They're a hindrance to the life that I want to live. They're not people. I can kill them. That is the ideology of the left, of the pro-choice movement, of the pro-abortion movement. Inconvenience is a death sentence. I happen to find liberals highly inconvenient. Does that mean I can go out and start shooting a bunch of liberals? Nope. I don't have that right because they have the right to life and to liberty and to the pursuit of happiness. We have the right to pursue happiness, but it's like iRobot and the three fundamental laws, if you think about it. You know, they progress, but they never contradict each other, and they're always dependent on the one before it. So the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to the pursuit of happiness, as far as the sexual revolution is concerned, you have the right to go out and pursue happiness. You have that right. But if it infringes upon the previous right to life, or liberty, you don't have that right. People do not have the right by nature to kill their offspring for the crime of being inconvenient. I'm sorry, you don't. And we can talk about all sorts of things. We can talk about, what about rape? It's awful. Awful. Falls under the you shall not commit adultery clause in the 10 Commandments. You are only supposed to be having sex with your spouse. Don't violate someone else's body to feed your carnal lust. That doesn't count as a pursuit of happiness that you have a right to. But as far as abortion and rape are concerned, less than 3% of abortions in America are performed because of rape and incest. So that means 97% of the 60 million people that have been killed in this country for the crime of being inconvenient were killed because they were inconvenient, not because it's a traumatic pregnancy or there was incest or rape. If you're going to kill anyone, kill the rapist. Rape should be a capital offense, although maybe not, because all the rape accusations, and now Hollywood is just totally devouring itself, and they can't even get their rape accusations right because apparently bad sex and regret later now constitutes rape. See, the problem is that the pro-life people for 45 years have known what they stood for. Feminists, they can't figure it out. They have no idea. And they contradict each other all the time. They're devouring each other, not allowing pro-life feminists to march, being questioned about, hey, maybe you should take that big pink knit vagina off of your head because it's offensive to transgender people. Well, but okay, so people who self-identify as women but don't yet have I'm not going to call it a vagina. Those who self-identify as women but don't yet have a surgically mutilated penis that somewhat resembles a vagina, they're not allowed to be a part. How many genders do liberals say that there are, and yet we're having a women's march? They cannot get their ideology straight. They're devouring each other. And one of my favorite things to do is just pop some popcorn, watch TV, and watch the left eat itself. Meanwhile, for 45 years, we've known what we stood for. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are fundamental rights, and that concept is blatantly self-evident. There's all sorts of conversations we can have, but are they productive? You know, one of the big things, the big signs in the pro-life movement is defunding Planned Parenthood. When they get $500 million from the federal government, and most of your business is killing children. Wait, Ryan, hold on. Abortion is only 3% of what Planned Parenthood does. Yeah, and killing Jews was only 3% of what Hitler did. Never mind the fact that abortion being 3% of what Planned Parenthood does is like saying football is only 3% of what the NFL does. Well, I mean, you have stadiums and clothing and hot dogs and beer and all sorts of stuff. If we itemize every single hot dog, every single beer, every single jersey, every single seat being sold, yeah, football is only 3% of what the NFL does. And that's what Planned Parenthood does. They line item. A woman can go in for one thing, and they will line item every individual thing it takes to give her that one service so that they can say abortion is only 3% of what we can do. And if we're going to be pro-choice, let's talk about a woman's right to choose. Women have the right to choose phenomenal health care. And, believe it or not, the choice that women have for phenomenal, actual, legitimate health care far outnumbers the number of Planned Parenthoods in America. Several thousands of choices nationwide. Like what? Somewhere between 500 and 600 Planned Parenthoods in America. Women have a choice. They don't need Planned Parenthood because the actual medical provider they can go to, the actual women's center and crisis centers that they can go to that vastly outnumber Planned Parenthood will provide better quality of care and actually give a woman a choice and encourage a woman to make her own decision. If you want women to have rights, stop sending them to Planned Parenthood where the only right they're told they have is to kill their child. Send them to an actual crisis center or a women's center or a health center or an actual women's clinic. They vastly outnumber Planned Parenthood. We don't need Planned Parenthood. Women don't need Planned Parenthood. They don't. And Planned Parenthood knows this, and they're closing in record numbers, and they're caught up in a scandal where they have been caught admitting that they sell unborn baby parts on the black market. We don't need Planned Parenthood. Women don't need Planned Parenthood. I love women so much that I want better than Planned Parenthood for women. I want better for my wife than Planned Parenthood. That's why she's never been to one. Because we go to actual credible doctors. Because she made the choice to have a good job, that provides quality insurance that can cover all of her health care. And, by the way, she didn't have to rack up thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to go to college to get that job. This is really long, and I'm rambling, so we're going to stop. Basically, at the end of the day, March for Life, a bunch of the youngest demographic, which is phenomenal to see, young people going out and saying, killing people is wrong. Versus the Women's March, where they're dressing up as vaginas and drawing pictures of President Trump with an asshole for a mouth and screaming about how racist the president is because, God forbid, he should believe, regardless of skin color, illegal entry to the country is a crime. God forbid the president should affirm that something illegal constitutes criminal activity. He's a racist. God forbid he maybe should say something to the effect of, hey, America's the greatest country on earth. And liberals say that all the time. It's the greatest country on earth. Well, Colin Kaepernick doesn't say that, but he gets praised when he does it. It's the greatest country on earth. Follow that to its logical conclusion. That means other countries aren't that great. They might be constituted as, shitholes. I have traveled the globe. I have been to other countries. I spent 2 years of my life in a country that I will, to my death, describe as a shithole. This is what it is. So, the March for Life, it's going to win. Abortion will be made illegal in this country, and we will look back on these years where we slaughtered our young and offered them to the pagan god Molech and go, what have we done? What have we done? Lord have mercy. Kyrie eleison. We will look back on this time with regret. Because killing someone is wrong. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not murder. Not religious dogma. It's the law. And if we're going to talk about women's rights, let's close on this one, shall we? Let's talk about the hypocrisy of feminism for a little bit. If we're going to talk about women's rights, we're going to talk about men's rights too. If my wife gets pregnant and she wants to have an abortion, that's her right. I don't get to say so. But if my wife gets pregnant and I push her down the stairs and she breaks her neck and dies, I get charged with a double homicide. Apparently, the unborn are only people when a man kills them. The hypocrisy of the left, the hypocrisy of feminism, and the fact that the liberals are tearing themselves to shreds is entertaining and hopefully the harbinger of their final ideological demise. Their ideology is failing. It can't stand scrutiny. It denies science and basic human reason, things that are self-evident. The right to life, on the other hand, is a self-evident right given to us by our Creator. It's a tough subject. Sorry to make such a tough, long video, but you know what? It's an important topic. It is an important topic, and I will continue to be a part of the fight for the right to human life. Because unlike what the feminists tell you in their march, there's no basic human right that they are being denied. 60 million Americans have been denied the very first fundamental human right, the right to life. And they were denied that right because that life would be inconvenient to the person whose own actions caused their existence in the first place. It is time for women to stop saying, I have the right to kill my child, and it's time that men and women stand up and say, if we do this, we might be blessed with a child. Are we prepared for this reality? If no, don't do this. If yes, children are a blessing. Have at it. I have 3. The wife and I talk about having more. And if we can't biologically have more, we talk about adopting more. Why? Because we love children, because they're a blessing. And I say that as a man who constantly calls my children thing 1 and thing 2, and constantly attaches the word monster at the end of their first name, because that's how they can behave sometimes. They are still a blessing. Children are a blessing, not a curse. They're a joy, not a consequence. Defend the right